Thanks, Scott, and welcome everybody. Our topic today, I'm calling this "Wait or Create," and what this is kind of an extended meditation on the Serenity prayer as it applies to coupleships and as it applies to our attitudes about our relationships. So I was looking back. It was shortly after our last webinar. I color code my notebook, so blue is webinar stuff, and I just had this line in blue written in the middle of a stream of thought that said, wait versus create. And I was trying to figure out this morning what was going on when I was thinking about that. And it's a way I want to get at what ends up being a very helpless attitude about our relationships and what to do about problems in our relationship. So if you'll remember the Serenity prayer, and I really hope I don't butcher it since I put myself on the spot here. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. The ACA Serenity prayer is, God grant me the serenity to accept the people I cannot change, the courage to change the one I can, and the wisdom to know that one is me. Either way, the whole idea of this is there are things out there that we can act upon and things out there that we cannot. And it's really important to get your timing and your assessment right. Now, I'm going to challenge what I think often turns into a black and white way of thinking about what I change and what I can change and what I can't. Generally, and I don't think this is necessarily a bad way to go. Generally, other people fall in the category of things we can't change. And ourselves always falls in the category of things that we can. I think it's a little more complicated than that. And we're going to talk about why. So there's a couple of fundamental principles to remember as we talk about waiting or creating and when to do what. So first is that everything is a feedback loop. If you're part of it, it's a feedback loop for you. You're participating whether you think you are or not. Think about traffic. There's a freeway entrance not far from my office that sometimes I'll take home, and I always have this sense of when it's a certain time of day and the traffic is bad, oh, I'm getting into bad traffic. And I didn't think about this until a couple of weeks ago that once I merge, I am now part of the bad traffic. So somebody else who's at the next exit merging, they'll see my car and they'll be like, oh, bad traffic, and I'm part of that. So everything we participate in or everything we don't participate in or don't think we're participating in, it's a feedback loop. We are being impacted and responding to everything constantly, whether we want to or not. So remember that here. Whatever stance you take in your relationship or whatever stance you take for a problem, you are doing something. You are changing something. You're a part of what comes next. The next principle is that ownership of choice and action, so owning both our ability to choose and to act, is required for functional relationships. Another way to put this, I've heard Stan Tatkin say it, there are no passengers. We're both drivers in every situation, every circumstance. Now we'll talk about how that looks, and again, how that's not that's a principle. It's not necessarily a hard and fast, verifiable law, but the idea that there are no passengers here, we both have a right to drive, we both ought to be driving, that's really important. And then the third thing is there rarely are right choices. I've had the pleasure over the last month of moving up a home renovation timeline much faster than I thought I was going to have to do it. So I've spent the last 2 weekends putting flooring in my basement. And I live in a home that was built in 1947. You could say my house, it's got good bones, but old houses, those of you who live in them, you know that there's quirks. So my basement has a concrete floor, and you would think that a poured concrete floor would be relatively level. I poured concrete before. Sometimes I get a slant or a slope, but like getting the surface relatively flat, not a problem, except for my basement. There are some places that are literally like this, and you can't see them because it's not like the concrete has been chipped away. It's like it got poured wavy and it stayed wavy. So as I'm laying these like rigid planks, I worked all day a couple weeks ago on Saturday. I worked all day and I got done and I looked at what I had done on the floor and it looked like crap. And I was thinking like, okay, I've worked with this product before. It's really not that hard. And then I started thinking like, oh, I can cover that up with trim, like this will be fine. And then I started thinking about what we had spent to buy this product. We got a good product. And I thought, if I'm spending this money on the product, I don't want it to look like crap. So the very next time I worked on the floor was tearing up half of what I had done. And I got an angle grinder. It's a tool that you can attach a blade that will grind concrete. And I went to work on the subfloor, on the parts of the floor that were not flat, that were not doing what they needed to. And I had to do quite a bit of grinding. So the next day that I was planning to work, I thought I would finish it. I only got like the grinding done and replaced what I had done the day before. All that's to say, I didn't know what action was going to need to be taken on the subfloor until I got some layers on and I started to see, okay, how is this laying and how is this interacting? And there were times, thankfully not too many, but the work was halted on progressing on laying down the floor because I had to address another issue that came up as I had picked this path and gone. Our relationships, our lives are the same way. Very rarely are you going to be able to see from beginning to end, this is exactly how it's going to go and this is what I need. So a lot of times we get really locked up, frozen up in, well, I don't know what the right choice is. I don't know what to do. Recognize that very rarely are there objectively right choices that we can see ahead of time. What we do is we take action, we lay things out, we see how they go, and we have to be willing to readjust if we get a result that we don't like or a result that's not on target. So think about that. Think about these three things. Everything's a feedback loop. Ownership of choice and action is required. And very rarely are there right choices. You have to take action and take feedback on that action to see if you're getting what you want. Think about those as we talk about what waiting and creating are and how and when you might use them to help your relationship. So waiting, this is the things I cannot change, the people I cannot change. This is a stance where we've determined that factors are outside of ourself and our influences. So by factors outside myself, like one of the examples I have here is when you get sick or a loved one is ill and the only thing that is going to heal is time, like think viral infections, think broken bones. Like, yeah, you said it initially, you immobilize, there's that kind of stuff, but it's time and the body doing its work. You don't control how your body does its work. So this is allowing things to unfold without an active attention. That's what pure waiting is. Waiting is not this. Come on. When are you going to do it? When's this going to happen? That's not waiting, because this is actually an intervention. This is doing something. This is speaking up. Waiting is really, it's passive. It's completely passive. We've decided this stuff is outside of our control. We've got to wait for a better opportunity, wait for another rotation of the planets, alignments with stars, whatever it is. So some examples of this, before we get to examples, when you're waiting, you have to own that you're just along for the ride until things change or until there's a new opportunity presented. So think of weather. My son's playing flag football this fall. By the way, I couldn't be more proud of him, and I never thought watching kids play football would be so fun, but it's like my favorite thing right now. A couple weeks ago, it started raining at the beginning of the game, which we were prepared for, but then there was lightning. And the refs the city league's policy was if there's lightning, we have to wait 20 minutes from the last strike to resume the game. Otherwise, we get all the players off the field. That was a passive waiting. We had a few choices. We could go to the cars. We could sit under our umbrellas. We could decide to go home. Ultimately, the refs called the game and said, we're not playing anymore because this is not going to let up. But there was nothing we could do about the concern about the lightning, about the rain, until nature was just done with its thing. That's what waiting is. So examples of this: when you wait in a line, I'll just state a personal preference. I hope you're not the kind of person when you're waiting in a line where you're anxiously looking ahead and saying, can we speed things up? I hope you're not generally that person waiting in a line, because most of the time in a line, it's whoever we're waiting for, they're doing their thing and it's going to go at a pace that it's going to go at, and you'll get your turn when it's your turn. Waiting in traffic, like I said, traffic is another one of those, something I cannot change. Like I said before, when you or a loved one is ill and time is needed to heal. There are other things like, what was the example of this? I was talking with a friend a couple of years ago. He knew he really wanted to make a career change, but it was going to be so many months before he was fully vested in his stock options. And he decided he was going to wait. Even though it was kind of unbearable, he didn't want to give up his stock options. So that was a wait. I'm not going to make a job change. I'm not even going to hint that I'm making a job change until I know I'm fully vested and that's secure. And then, that's waiting. Now let's talk about creating. In the Serenity Prayer, these are the things that I can change. So, by the way, I like to think in terms of creating versus changing, because I think changing makes us think about our pants or our shoes or our shirt. That's like an event. It's just something that happens. You do X, Y, Z, and well, bam, new pair of pants. When it comes to change in relationships, it's actually more of a creation. It's more of a co-creation. 99% of the time, the changes that happen in a relationship or in individuals, they're created. So they start as an idea, an intention, they move into taking rough form. It gets more precise and more momentum as time goes on because it's an organic process. I like to also think in terms of creating too, because you can have creative processes where multiple people meaningfully contribute. Change is really easy to lock it into, well, you need to change, well, that needs to happen. And I actually think that this has implications for couples in recovery from addiction, because whether it was the addiction that caused issues in the relationship or the issues were there, regardless of whether there was addiction or not, the point is, if you're going to get something new, you're going to have to co-create it. No single person can make the changes that are needed to fix the relationship. It's both of yours. So thinking in terms of what are we creating here? Addiction and discovery has necessitated a hard reset on our relationship. Are we going to keep going not as mindfully like we were before, or are we going to get really particular about what we want? Hey, I've never said this to you before. We've never had an issue around it, but while we're at the business of changing and fixing a lot of things in our relationship, I want you to know that this dynamic I don't love and I want something different. This is more what I want. That's what this is not just creating an answer to addiction. It's creating a new life that's better for both of you. So creation is a stance where we've determined that we want something different, and we can / should / want to be an active participant in getting what we want. So let me say that again. It's a stance we've determined that there's something we want that's different than what we have. And it's not an or maybe, it's an and. You've decided that you're going to be an active participant, either because you can, should, or want to, in making what you want come to fruition. That's where creative energy comes from. That's where the ability to intervene and make change comes from. So in that, you have to own that there's limits to what you can create. Just because I see this all the time with couples, we would have a happy relationship if you XYZ. And essentially what they lay out is a complete personality rehab. If you really want a partner that's that different than what you have right now, if there's not a fundamental, no, I really want you, I want you without all the crap, but I want you. If that's not how you feel, go find a new partner. Because it's fundamentally unfair to tell somebody, I would be happy with you if you weren't you. It's a really crappy thing to say to somebody. So you have to be aware of what the limits are and what you can create. So as I was considering a new floor in my basement, because the home was built in 1947, the basement or the ceilings in my basement are about 6.5 feet tall. So I can stand upright, even under the ductwork that we have, I can stand upright, and it does, like, my head's just right there. Oh, you can't see that in the mirror. My head's just right there. My brother, who's 6'4", he has to bend like this to come into my basement, and then he can stand upright where it's 6'5". So one of the things I considered for just a few seconds was, what would it take to get higher ceilings in the basement? Well, I could break out all the concrete and I could drop the floor a foot or two. And then I could refill the concrete. And it took about that long for me to be like, no, that's not going to happen. First of all, it's messing with the foundation of a house, which isn't an awesome idea. I'd have to figure out how to get lots and lots of cement down my stairs into my basement. Half of my house would be inhabitable and operable for who knows how long. It's a change that I wanted, but it's not a realistic one. It's not something that I'm ever going to have. My brother actually had a coworker who lives in a similar neighborhood to mine, and he dug by hand. He dug out his basement and made it lower. We came to find out that he was severely bipolar and he was in a manic episode. So that's why he could do it, because he was manic and he didn't need to sleep, and there were no limits to him. But you have to recognize what the limits are and what you can create, and you have to be real about what you can actually make happen. So this is where the third part of the Serenity prayer comes in, the wisdom to know the difference. What that is acceptance. There are some things, even in your relationship, the Gottmans refer to them as perpetual issues. There isn't a resolution to this. A really easy example is, if there's a big enough age gap between you and your partner, there will be generational differences that you can't overcome. You can't educate each other enough. You can't get all the same cultural references. Sometimes that's a deal breaker. It doesn't have to be, but it's also not an issue that's going to be fixed. I have a really dear friend that he and his wife are from, they're a generation or two apart. And it's really funny to hear him talk about her music. It's like, that's not real music. Real music comes from, and he'll list all these like classic rock things. I haven't even dared introduce him to what I listen to, because that's like 2 or 3 generations removed from him. So you have to be real about what the issues are and how far you can go with them, and decide, can we live with this? There are some issues that, yeah, you could work on for the rest of forever and drive yourself crazy doing it, because it's not going to budge. By the way, I don't think addiction or acting out or doing any kind of relationship harmful or hurtful behavior is in that category of it can't change. But willingness also has a lot to do with it. Interest. An individual who's addicted, they really have to be interested in getting better if their changes in their recovery are going to make their relationship better. If they're doing it like in the last webinar, if they're doing it because they're afraid someone's going to be mad at them, they're only going to go so far, and they're not going to create the relief and the opportunity for themselves and others they could otherwise. So some examples of creating, and I tried to come up with examples that were like co-created in a relationship that had to do with couples in recovery. So I want real accountability. I want that from you. I want that to be a part of our relationship. That means that if I want real accountability, I will give it, and I'll ask for it, and I won't give up until you either tell me no way or you start doing it. So this is how cultural changes happen. Very rarely do you need to throw a riot in your relationship to force change to happen. It's more of this, think about it as weathering. If we have this habit where there's not, where we're both not accountable, we have to wear away at that. So I'm going to watch for my own accountability too. And I'm going to point out to you when I'm not accountable. I'm also going to say to you, hey, that's not accountability. I thought we agreed to this. Or, hey, that's not accountability. That's what I need. You need to tell me whether you're interested in that or not, because I need to know what my next steps are. Another example, we want to be less defensive with one another. So this is something we're going to co-create. And remember, again, this is like step-by-step organic things take time. They don't unfold all at once. It's not like putting on a pair of pants. So in order to be less defensive with each other, we're going to take feedback as help. We're going to create this new rule, this new way of understanding before us. When you give me feedback, it's because you're trying to help me. And you're trying to help us. We're going to monitor our own thoughts and behaviors as well as work together with each other. So it's not actually co-creation to say, well, I'll keep track of my stuff and I'll do it right. And hopefully you get the idea. That's not co-creation. There are some times that's all you can do. That's what you need to do. But that's creating something for yourself with maybe an eye on, well, I think this should create something for my partner too. And unless you're actually sitting down with your partner and saying, hey, let's create this, let's do this, here's what we're about, don't expect your example to rub off on them. Don't expect them to just get it. You'll be really disappointed and frustrated, and they will be too. So we'll monitor our own thoughts and behaviors, and we'll work together to eliminate this defensiveness from what we permit with each other. So notice how that co-creation is less about, all right, this is what we're going to do tomorrow, and it's more about, here's the guideposts we're going to set up. Think about it like a bonsai tree, or I have a neighbor who has some really beautiful ornamental apple trees that they grow along a fence line. So they don't grow in the round, they grow like this. And in the fall, it's really cool because you get these big green apples on their living fence. It's like that. I'm setting this up and we're going to train in this direction. We're going to force our growth in this direction because that's where we want to go. That's what creation is. Now, many of you might be thinking, okay, so when do I use what? Again, go back to the beginning. That misses the point. Neither of these extremes. Oh, I didn't say this in the beginning. Sorry, I wrote this in the beginning. But neither of these extremes are true. Extremes rarely are. Trauma and chronic stress can make us think in binary ways, black and white. So I want you to think more in terms of when is it time to push and when is it time to rest. And if you're thinking about this for your relationship, the very, very best way to figure that out is to commit to talking together. Let's decide what our stance needs to be. Let's decide what needs to happen here. Because this waiting and creating in organic growth, these are always interacting. Sometimes it's time to grow and sometimes it's time to just maintain. Be careful. What I would say is be careful if you're noticing that you tend to be all or most one or the other. That's a sign you have some rigidity going on. That's a sign that you may be under a lot of stress. That's a sign that you may not be thinking creatively or completely about the issues that you're dealing with. Because there's very rarely a one right approach to solving a problem. So the key is, if you want change to happen in your relationship, whether you have to wait or create, work together. I'll give an example of this. I worked with a couple some time ago that they were doing a therapeutic separation. And I mean, there's a million different configurations for these and how they feel. But in this case, the wife who had been betrayed, she felt pretty relieved being able to separate. He went from this stance of like, everybody bugs me, especially my wife. I don't know if I want this relationship, to like, he crumbled and became like a little boy. And I don't mean that pejoratively. He was scared and he was anxious. And the separation was such a hard thing for him. After they had structured the separation, they determined that they were going to have a check-in session 30 days in, and that 30 days was going to be no contact. They were going to talk about the business they owned in common and their children, but they weren't going to talk about them. So they had a check-in, and she was much more of the wait variety. I've told you what I need to see. Now I'm sitting back. I'm going to see what you do with it. It was more of the wait variety. She also, there was going to be some create. When he violated boundaries, she let him know. And he was more of the create. Okay, I get it. You're upset. Our relationship's on the line. Can we please get together and can we please start working on things? So I'll always remember this first check-in session because he had so much of that, like, let's create energy. And she had more of the, hey, I've created, I've told you what I need. Now I need you to do it. And I'm going to sit back and watch. That's what I need. I need to sit back and watch. And you need to get to work on you. You need to get to work on addressing my concerns. It was really interesting to see in the session, he went from this like, but can we to like, he had settled into this. Okay, I get it. This is about what I'm doing towards you right now. This is not about us yet. And it was really hard because when they hung up, when they said goodbye, he jumped out of his chair. He was with me by video. She was with her therapist. He jumped out of his chair and like hands at his hair. And he said, I want to hit something. I'm so much pain right now. I said, what's going on? And he said, it's so hard for me to not be able to tell her that I love her. But that's what she's asked for. And so I'm going to need to figure out what to do with those feelings instead of dump them on her. She's told me they're too much. I'm going to have to figure out what to do with those feelings. It was such a good example of collaboration. And it wasn't just her holding the line. It was also him really trying to get it. And there were several times he had to stop and say, okay, I'm sorry, that's my filter. I'm really trying to understand where you're coming from. Could you go there again? And it was rough. I don't think it was pleasant for either one of them, but they collaborated and they ultimately decided on, here's the stance that we need right now. Here's what we're going to do. And we'll keep each other up to date on how it's going. That's where relationship comes from. That's where how we're going to move forward comes from. It doesn't come from one person having some brilliant idea. No, let's do this. And if you just do this, I've already thought it through. It comes from, let's really talk. Let's get to know each other. Let's see what's going on. So that is waiting or creating, or in other words, the Serenity prayer for relationships.
Thank you, Jon. I love, because I've always interpreted the Serenity prayer as being all about me all the time, because I'm a little narcissistic. And
hey, we all need some of that.
I love looking at it as, sort of a two-person endeavor here with the Serenity prayer. I really like that, and the wait and create. Thank you. We have questions. We have a couple of questions from our last session, so I'm going to do those real quick, and then we'll jump into the Q&A for this session. So the first question from last time is, how do we deal with the anger and animosity thrown at us when we confront the addict about things they are or are not doing? So this is from a betrayed partner, obviously.
Yeah, I would. So my first reaction to that, we usually say to the person on the receiving end of anger is, don't make it personal, even if it is. I would also say when you're doing something that makes someone angry or they don't like it, don't take it personal. Because if it's really like a boundary that you're enforcing, or, even on the lightest end, like, hey, I just want you to know that when you do that, it's not awesome for me. So if you care, if you're aware of that, just helping you calibrate. The reaction is to the information you're sharing. The reaction is to the interruption in the, I'm just plugging along, doing what I think is best. Which if you look at addiction as this like chronic need to escape or get relief, sorry, I shouldn't say chronic need, we all have needs for that. This chronic way of escaping in a way that does not consider the collateral damage, it's a better way to say it. Having that escape interrupted is painful. It's like when my brother was a teenager, he was born with a concave sternum, so he has like this dip in his chest. And when he was like a junior in high school, they tried to repair it surgically. So they like broke his chest and popped it out. And it was like the most miserable, painful thing I've ever seen. His recovery from that. There was a time in the hospital, he went 2 days without any morphine because there was a kink in the line. And the nurse didn't know it. And he, he'd never had surgery before. He didn't know how it was supposed to feel. So he went like 2 days without any pain medication, and it was like a different creature. That's what happens when in our addictive ecosystem, when that gets interrupted with reality, or that gets interrupted with, hey, I'm here too, it's like the morphine drip is pinched off and there's tons of pain that comes up. Most people deal with unexpected pain through anger. So I would say internally work on a part of you that can say, this isn't about me. This is about, I've interrupted your process. I've put a stop to your morphine drip. This is your pain that you're showing me. You don't necessarily have to do anything about that. Sometimes the extent of your job is, I need to let you know. I need to give you the information. You need to decide what to do with that. But always, you don't have to stick around and absorb anger. You can deliver information, and you can even say, we don't need to talk about this. I just need to let you know how I feel. I'd appreciate it if you think about it. I'm going to head out for a while. I'll be back in 2 hours and we can check in if you'd like. There's lots of ways you can do with that, but don't feel like you have to stick around and you have to accept a fight on anger terms. You don't.
And we've kind of talked about this at various points, but there are also ways to approach conveying this information. Sometimes are better than others. Some approaches are better than others. And,
yeah. One approach generally that I'll see, so addicts tend to be a little more islandy, like that whole, like, don't interrupt me. It's not just because I'm in pain. It's also like the way that a lot of more avoidantly attached people function. So we call it a touch and go. If you want to convey information to your partner and it usually doesn't go well, you may say, hey, I wanted to talk to you about laundry, dishes, and recovery meetings. Could you be ready in 15 minutes? And you get a yes or a no, and then you really, you leave them alone. Well, I can talk now. No, let's do it in 15 minutes. I'll be ready. You can be ready. And you leave them alone, and you come back in 15 minutes. And sometimes that touch and go, it gives them a chance to shift their brain, to move to any part of them and say, oh yeah, I do want to work with you and I do want to hear what you have to say. That just may not be on the surface. So approach goes a long way. I think tone of voice always helps. I think getting right to the point in what you want. If you have too long of a preamble and somebody knows that some news is coming that's going to be hard, it actually makes them more anxious if you're focusing on not the thing that's going to be hard. So, hey, I'm telling you this because I want you to know, not because I want to hurt you, right into XYZ. You can frame it up with a reminder, we're a team, I want to be a team, here's the information. So there's all sorts of ways that your approach can be different. Just don't get locked into one way thinking I'm doing it right. If you're not getting the reaction you want, it may not be that you're doing it wrong, but it may be there's another way to handle this. And stay creative, stay on your toes, keep trying different things if you want to.
Yeah. Okay, next one here. I've been sober for 20 months from porn and the lies that come with this. Congratulations. My wife continues to pull me in and then push me away. I have asked her how I could show her through my actions that she can trust me. And she responds that if I was a normal person, she wouldn't have to tell me that. How can I respond to that?
Normal people can't read minds. And it's a really easy trap to fall into in a relationship, that if you really loved me, you would understand me. I think it's some of the most solid relationship advice I've ever gotten. I got this from Stan Tatkin, to always remember that you're married to a stranger. And what that means is, even if you feel like you really know each other, or you've been through this a million times, you really don't know who you're with. So you really do have to make everything explicit. And if you see that as this is not how relationships are supposed to work, that would always be annoying. If you see the truth of that as well, of course we need to communicate. We don't share a brain. We don't see things the same way. Even if, let's say, from dinner tonight to tomorrow morning, when we go to work, we actually did share a brain and we were having the same experience. We were exactly on the same page. Well, the minute you leave the house, the minute your paths depart, you're now having very, very different experiences, and you don't have the same brain anymore, and you will come back different people. So all of that's to say, I think you really kindly and patiently ask, I know this is frustrating for you. I'm recognizing that even my best guesses are off. I'm recognizing that I don't always get it right. I'm asking for your help for me to remember. I want to do what's right for you. Sometimes I don't remember, sometimes I don't understand. And always holding that line that if it has to do with our relationship, it's really an us thing. No, nobody carries water alone and makes a relationship work. That's not a relationship.
Okay. And what about the push pull? Pull me in, push me out. When I teach work groups to addicts, I say, you have to understand your wife is on a roller coaster, and you're also on an emotional roller coaster,
Yeah.
and it's not the same roller coaster. And it sounds
Yeah.
like this is happening. So
Super, super normal. It's that's a create thing. I would say that falls in the create. If we're doing this push-pull thing and we're both recognizing this hurts us, we don't like it. Some good marriage therapy can help start to look at why is this happening? And that can help us decide, is this something we need to wait out? Sometimes that is part of the like individual healing from trauma. Do we have some structural issues, some things that we do together? Do we have some concerns that we're not actually talking about? Are there triggers, or there red flags that we're not both aware of? Some good marriage therapy can help understand exactly why that's happening. And like I said, it's not always a sign that something is really, really off. Sometimes it's just part of the process, but you guys might need some help in determining what is this, where is it coming from, and what can and should we do about it right now. Together, it really is a together thing.
okay, let's jump into today's questions. What can I do to help my wife heal? She feels like I have not done enough to divorce my mother from our relationship. We have an enmeshment issue here, obviously. I feel like I have changed the dynamic and isolated myself from my family of origin. How do I prove to my wife that I'm done with my mother and I'm moving forward with her, meaning my wife? I need some input on this. And I'm sure you have a lot.
Well, so I'll make this really simple. There's three things that are part of full healing from enmeshment. And I just realized as I'm saying it that way, I give the impression that it can be something you're done with. You never are. And here's why. Because there's the impact of your family on your body. That's where the boundaries come in. So the three things are separation, differentiation, and emancipation. So separation is the boundaries. I isolate myself. I don't talk to you. We don't do holidays together. That's all separation. It's a really important piece of the puzzle, but by itself, it is not sufficient, because then there's also the impact on your psyche, on your spirit, on your way of seeing the world. So the real divorce from mom, it doesn't even start to get addressed in the boundaries. That's about relief. The divorce from mom comes in the differentiation, which is the recognition and full embracing that I'm a different person than my family, and even I'm a different person than you. So it's not just I differentiate from my family of origin, I differentiate from everybody, recognizing that we are not the same. We don't have to think the same or feel the same. It's not a differentiated stance to say, well, we just agree to disagree. That's not differentiation. That's avoidance. Differentiation is we can be different and still collaborative and still fully understanding of each other. And then there's emancipation, which is this, it's this complete feeling, this complete embracing of not only am I different from you and I have boundaries, but also whatever you have going on, it doesn't get inside of me unless I want it to. So I really am my own person with my own life. That's the harder work. The differentiation and emancipation is the harder work of enmeshment recovery. You can get the separation through just reading books or watching videos. To really emancipate and differentiate, you need intensive therapy. That's not going to happen on its own. You need to be working with someone, attending an ACA, Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families group. Like, this is the years and years of work I was just reflecting the other day with a friend. I'm 15 and a half years into my recovery. And I feel like it's only been in the last handful of years that I've really started to feel emancipated. I've really started to feel completely differentiated. And it's not like I haven't been working on it. But again, this is a creation thing. It's a process. It's organic. It is not a destination. It's not, all right, I drew the boundaries. It's done. I don't think about them. I don't talk to them. There's attitudes. There's ways of interacting with others that are holdovers, that are carryovers. And that takes some really dedicated individual work to, I shouldn't say stop that, but to create something new within yourself that lets you actually have an unencumbered relationship with the people that you're choosing. And by unencumbered, I mean there isn't the shadow of mom, there isn't the shadow of family. If you haven't done the differentiating emancipation work, I can guarantee you those shadows are all over the place.
Separation, differentiation, emancipation. I just want to repeat those because is this full separation the ultimate goal? Where, I mean, I did move 2,000 miles away for a reason, but it was so I could, I mean, I wasn't consciously making a decision, I'm going to separate so I can differentiate and emancipate. But that has happened over the course of 25 years that I've been away from. And now I am actually able to welcome my mother into my life in a relatively healthy way.
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking. I know you talked about this. I think it might have been last Christmas. You talked about this in the webinar that your mom came and stayed with you.
Yeah, she's
And
coming again this year.
yeah, so that's what an emancipated, differentiated person can do is even with all of our history, it's not despite our history, it's even with all of our history. On Dr. Adams' website, overcomingenmeshment.com, the tagline is you can break free and still love your parent. You don't have to love your parent. But that's what the emancipated stance is if I wanted to have you in my home, if I wanted to have you as my guest, I could do that and be healthy. Because we're no longer doing this death spiral, and boundaries alone, separation alone, it doesn't address that. Yeah. Separation gives you breathing room if you'll take it, but it doesn't fix things.
Yeah, and yeah, when I read I've isolated myself from my family of origin, I thought, how sad. Although I did that for a while, but it was never, maybe it was my long-term goal, but anyway.
Well, I found something similar with my family. There was a time I got so fed up, my long-term goal was just to stay away. But I found as I stayed away and I continued to work on myself, there was this part of me that came awake again. And I was like, I miss these people. And there's things that I really love about them. And I want them to be a part of my life and my children's life and my family's life. And, you know, I thought my work was done in separating. And it was real disappointing when I was like, crap, I can't just cut these people out. That doesn't feel complete either. And it was, you know, it was another bar, and I'm really glad that I worked in that because I've had some really enjoyable, sweet experiences with my parents and my mother over the years because I've worked on that space in me that can choose the relationship that I want with them.
Right. Yeah, which is, you know, a differentiated, emancipated relationship. And I find that I enjoy it. Well, I mean, my father's dead, but I enjoyed both of my parents once I was able to get some emotional distance and become my own person. And I'm so grateful. So yeah. To the questioner, please keep working on this. There's more to do. And I think that's what Jon was saying. And I think why I brought up what I did is, yeah, there's a lot more left to do here.
Unfortunately, it's not like a course of antibiotics that you take for 7 or 10 days and then the infection is cleared up. This is more of a lifestyle commitment. And yeah. I would say for like 100% of the enmeshment I know who are doing really well in their recoveries, part of that lifestyle is they're in consistent therapy and they're in consistent support. Yeah. Not because they always feel broken, but because it's like this is how they keep discovering and learning about and healing themselves.
Yeah, and to put it in Serenity prayer terms, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Mom, she has not changed one bit. The courage to change the things I can, which just me and how my attitudes and how I interact and how much power I give her or don't get, all of that other stuff, and the wisdom to know the difference. And yeah. And I think this next question here goes right into today's topic as well. Hi guys, thank you for this Zoom. It is so informative. You're welcome. I'll say that on behalf of myself and John. Question is, if I tell my husband I don't want you to act out, I do want you to go to 12 steps, see a CSAT, listen to podcasts and all the other stuff. I'm asking to stay in this marriage. Is that me trying to change my sex addict? So this person wants to know if she, asking for this stuff is an attempt to control them.
Well, so control and change are different. Of course, it's trying to change your sex addict husband. You want that. You should want that. It's not a great relationship arrangement to have one or both parties having their primary relationship being with addiction instead of their partner. Control is different. I actually misread this as I was looking at it, and the thing that I misread is this me trying to stay in my marriage or trying to change. So I think there's a really big difference. I would say the control or just, trying to change my partner for the sake of trying to change my partner, that's the, hey, I want you to do this. And then there's no consequence if they don't. There's no teeth to it. If that's really trying to create a better opportunity and relationship for you and ultimately your partner, because when I do well, you do better too. Then you look at those types of things as like, all right, if this is where we're starting at, I'm married to an addict and I can accept that. That's how it goes. In order for this marriage to work, I need this kind of structure. There's some structure I need from you. There's some structure I need from me, and there's some stuff we have to create together. Think about, we always use the metaphor with addiction is like, think about like diabetes or any other kind of chronic illness. There's management things we need to do. You could also look at those things as, these are the things that I need you to do. These are requirements for me to consider a relationship with you. Now, if one of your requirements was that your partner wasn't a serial killer, and this may be a really bad comparison, I'm not saying addicts are like serial killers, but if one of your requirements was, I don't want to be with a serial killer, and you find out that your partner is a serial killer, well, you have some criteria and you would say, I'm sorry, it's not going to work out. You kill people too much. It's the same thing with this. If this is really like integral to structuring a relationship that is safe for you and good for you, and if it's not there, this relationship is not safe and good for you, you have to be prepared at least for that conversation, if not for action. Because without that willingness to follow through and therefore to be consequences, feedback, if you don't do this, I've got to pull out in these certain ways because it's not safe for me, then that is just about control. That's my wish list. That's I really want to be with someone 3 inches taller. Why can't you be 3 inches taller? Versus I really wanted to be with someone who doesn't betray me and lie to me. Stop that. Or I'm not going to be able to be with you in the way that we have been. I won't meet your expectations as a spouse because you're not meeting mine. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with stating your needs and your desires for yourself and your relationship and setting boundaries around that. And the boundaries are not, you must do this. The boundaries are, I need this. And if I don't get it, I may take some steps
in order for me to consider moving forward with you as a couple, I need the following. Because we can move forward together, not as a couple.
Right.
We can move forward together as roommates. We can move forward together as co-parents. We don't have to be a romantically involved couple to be together.
Right. And a lot of couples do reach that decision. And are usually better off for it. But a lot of couples, that's not their goal. Most of the couples that you deal with and that we deal with at Seeking Integrity want to stay together.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is when you set boundaries, and these are the consequences if I don't get my needs met. So
Adult relationships, there's always terms, they're always conditional, they're always pay to play.
yeah,
Anybody listening to my voice and Scott's voice right now thinks that unconditional love is a part of an adult marriage and adult relationship, you're kidding yourself. It's not.
maybe parent child for a
That's
while.
what I was gonna say. That's what kids should get for their parents.
Yeah,
Until somewhere around early adulthood, and then it's your peers, and there's conditions too. Kids can treat their parents like crap, and their parents should love them regardless when they're kids.
yeah,
But when you're my peer and you're an adult and you treat me like crap, I'm going to say, don't do that. You can't come to the house anymore.
yeah.
So every adult relationship is conditional. It's pay to play. It doesn't work any other way. So if you're trying to make it, well, why don't you just love me for who I am? I can love you, live with you, want to be with you. That's a different thing. That has nothing to do with love. That has to do with whether or not this is a good idea.
Yeah. So, okay. Thank you, everybody. Lovely session as always. I'll get this posted as soon as I can. Remember, January 12th, we're going to do a special enmeshment webinar. So tell your friends, invite your family.
invite your mother.
Invite your mom. So, just an observation, but isn't parenting putting up good boundaries? Real quick, John.
Yeah. It is good boundaries. However, the thing you never take off the table with your child is, I won't love you if you do this. I will be cold to you. Yeah. There can be boundaries like, I mean, I have to do this with any one of my 4 kids at any time. Well, not the baby. He can't do anything wrong yet. The other baby can't do anything wrong either. The older kids, I do all the time. Hey, this isn't acceptable, man. You're gonna have to take a time out, or it's no screens today, or that hitting is an automatic grounding. Like, yeah, that's boundaries, but I don't stay mad. I don't punish beyond. In fact, the place that I try to stay, because I've read about this and I believe that it's true, I try to stay in this. Listen, there are consequences to action, but I don't use my disapproval or the threat of the withdrawal of my affection to get my kids to do what I want. That's not a boundary. That is conditional love. I shouldn't say I'm always, I try to always be warm. I try to always be accepting, even if what they're doing isn't something I like. I handle that in a different way.
Yeah. Thank you. And your kids are so lucky. I just want to say, I mean, I'm not there, but boy, I hear you talk, and you sent me pictures the other day, and I was like, oh my God, look,
I don't mean to sound cheesy. I feel like I'm really lucky. They're great kids. We got a great thing going, I think.
So, all right, everybody, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Have a good day. Have a great weekend. John, thank you again.
Bye.
See you, everybody.